Good morning and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici. Joining me today is Sam Vassallo. Today's headlines are as follows. Jorgen Fenech told Castile official he paid journalist named Ivan €10,000. Malta planning floating wind farms to power all of Gozo. Teachers union head breaks down COVID-19 numbers to uncover impact at schools. Just 2 found guilty of leaking revenge porn in 5 years. And road builders get 71 flats in deals with Medieval Foundation in Gozo. Stay tuned because after today's show, we've got a really special interview with Andrew Bonello, the president of Relief, to discuss regulating Malta's cannabis industry, particularly after the Prime Minister's recent announcement on the fact. To start off today's stories, we're kicking off with the main suspect in the Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination, Jorgen Fenech. Now it's been revealed by Illum that a high-ranking official at Castile spoke to Jorgen Fenech about potentially leaking a story to a journalist called Ivan. Jorgen Fenech, in reply, said he paid Ivan, the certain Ivan, €10,000 to publish that story. The issue dates back to January 2019. At the time, there were 3 Ivans employed with the Times of Malta. Ivan Fenech, who died a few months after, Ivan Martin, who is still employed at the newspaper, and Ivan Camilleri, who has since been fired, obviously because of his own previous links to Jorgen Fenech. To start off with, Ivan Martin has denied that it could possibly be him. He said the first time he contacted Jorgen Fenech was on 1st April 2019. So after this alleged message happened, for Ivan Martin's part, he actually said that this unnamed Castile official was actually Keith Schembri, the former Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. Meanwhile, Ivan Camilleri said this story was a total fabrication. Obviously, Camilleri had previously been fired from the Times of Malta following a publication from a story from Malta Today that he had tipped off Fenech about his imminent arrest way back in November 2019. Camilleri has actually sued Malta Today for libel and has sued Times of Malta for wrongful dismissal. But however, very strange development, but that's not all that there was about it, right, Sam?
Indeed, so this isn't the first time Ivan Camilleri is in hot water. Actually, yesterday, former Times of Malta editor Steve Malia shared messages between him and the late Daphne Caruana Galizia about Ivan Camilleri 8 years ago. So Caruana Galizia criticized Camilleri for refusing to vote in the 2013 election because his wife didn't get a Brussels job. So she called it a classic case of amoral familyism, which is essentially putting family affairs before common good. And she informed the former Times of Malta editor that she asked Ivan never to speak to her again and that she won't deal with any spiteful motives. Now this will essentially potentially frame people's idea of Camilleri, especially in light of people on the fence and the mounting allegations against him. So on to our next stories. Malta is planning floating wind farms to power all of Gozo. This was confirmed by Energy Minister Miriam Dalli yesterday in an interview, and essentially they are looking into constructing offshore wind farms 12 nautical miles off Gozo, which will essentially power Malta's sister island and even potentially have the power to power all of Malta. So this comes after proposals from the Nationalist Party to help Malta reach its green targets to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And may I remind you, Malta laid out very ambitious climate goals as part of the budget, including green investment. And I'm very excited to see if this actually comes into reality.
Yes, no, a really positive proposal, and it obviously inspires a lot of confidence, seeing the Malta's government and Malta's opposition parties so ready at least to transform the Malta's energy grid to at least one that uses a lot more renewables as a resource. And what I actually think this does actually quite positively. So obviously Malta, given its size and geographical location, tends to rely heavily on outsiders for energy supply. This will actually change that, right? We'll be able to have our own resource on the island, and hopefully gives a positive sign of things to come in the future Let's hope the government and the opposition actually means business this time around. On to our next story, onto COVID. So obviously we've all been a bit sort of mysterious about the situation at schools, but thankfully Graham Sansone, who's the president from the Union of Professional Educators, actually broke down numbers within schools to give quite an illuminating study of what's going on in Malta's educational establishments. So according to Sansone, since September, there have been 111 COVID-19 cases per week in Malta schools. Compared to the total number per week across Malta, which is 847. The number of COVID cases within schools per week makes up about 14 to 15%. On his part, Sansone actually said that the numbers are quite conservative because they failed to include the staggered approach schools took in reopening along with the Christmas period. Obviously raised a lot of questions about about the schools reopening, right? You know, there's been loads of debate around it. I know the government themselves and some other experts have been coy on reopening, right?
Exactly. So in fact, our Superintendent for Public Health, Charmaine Gauci, has defended the decision, saying essentially bringing children back to school will basically stabilize cases because they're going to less social gatherings with their family and less excuse to go out like that. Just for a quick COVID-19 update, there have been 130 new cases recorded yesterday and one new death, unfortunately, 134 recoveries, and with that, active cases have gone slightly down to 2,521. Hopefully they continue going down with the vaccine. On to our next story, just another statistical story. Just 2 have been found guilty of leaking revenge porn in the last 5 years since a law against it was enacted in 2016. So, Loving Malta reported that between 2017 and 2020, there have been 20 reports of distributing revenge porn in Malta. Just 2 from those 20 reports have been found guilty. One of them was sentenced to a 6-month sentence, suspended for 2 years, and another was slapped with a €4,000, 500 fine. So, just a quick look at the figures. In 2020, reports have shot up. They've over doubled. There have been 8 reports, and the fact that this has shot up could be good news. It means that perhaps people are more willing to come forward with this kind of reporting this kind of crime, but it could also mean that it's essentially increasing.
Yes, and obviously this report obviously comes in the wake of a recent case involving a girl with her, images and stuff being leaked everywhere across the island. Actually, quite obscene behavior all the way around. I was a bit worried personally by the numbers. Obviously, just seeing so few people found guilty of the crime makes me question how effective the law is, right? Because effectively 18 cases have either been unsolved or they found guilty. So obviously depends on the questions on what actually the police are doing to help solve this crime. To move on to our next story, going off to Gozo, concerning the application for 71 flats in Nadur, linked to a medieval foundation currently laying claim to loads of land around Gozo. So that foundation, for people who don't remember, is the Beneficio San Antonio della Navarra. It's a 17th century foundation that has now been claiming property rights all across Malta. The latest story, which is part of an investigation, a joint investigation by the Shift News and Love in Malta, links the foundation to a certain developer, Titan Development, who are now looking to build a 71-flat, 5-story building in Nadur. The actual project even recently got highlighted after a woman in the area released a video, highlighting sort of how this development was almost symptomatic to the changing face of the Gostin landscape, particularly ever since development, started growing in the area. They've also been linked to another development, which was a quarry in Ala, which quite famously, has long been linked to potentially being developed as a yacht marina. The foundation itself has been in the news quite a bit recently. This all started, from when they were asking current homeowners to pay 70,000 because they were on their land from dating God knows how far back when. It's a lot of these kind of dodgy claims, and many question whether these legal claims hold any water. The Prime Minister and Bernard Gregg have sort of been in the area pledging action, but we'll see how it develops, right? A bit more about that, Sam.
Indeed. So opposition leader Bernard Gregg has said that if there's any hint of corruption or wrongdoing, he pledged to remove the Nadur land from being registered. But the land registry itself has said that there are no grounds for deregistering it, so it essentially feels, that they're going to meet these Nadur residents, but essentially washing their hands from the whole situation. But we'll see how that develops.
Yes, we'll see how it develops. Let us know what you think about it in the comments below. We're about to go to a short video explaining, Relief's amazing proposals for the cannabis sector. After that, stay tuned. We've got an interview with Relief's president, Andrew Bonello. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a bit. Hi, and welcome back to Lovin Daily. With us, we've got Andrew Bonello, the president of Relief. We've got him here in the wake of, the Prime Minister's recent announcement, that he's pledging, some reform, particularly in the personal use of cannabis and particularly in the cultivation. Now, Relief have been proposing these things for years, so you guys are the experts on it. But something I think what people maybe might want to know, why set maybe like a 6-plant limit, in terms of cultivation or limits for that? How do you gauge personal use with that?
Well, 6 plants really is more of a safety net than anything else. One person might not need to grow 6 plants. One person might need to, because he might need to sort of extract some oils for it for medical purposes, also for recreational use. We don't want someone, to be going to jail or get arrested for a measly amount of plants.
Yes, sure, but it's obviously quite interesting, because I think maybe people out there might be worried, is that too much? Are people going to abuse? What would you say to people out there, a bit concerned maybe about that sort of limit being legalized?
There's nothing really to be concerned about, because those are going to be your personal plants, So everyone who's a consumer will be able to do the same. So there's not really much where you can, go and sell it or anything.
Okay, so another interesting proposal you have, I guess, is you make this distinction that the sellers, right, should be non-for-profit social clubs. Why is that, rather than, let's say, employing a system maybe a bit like Amsterdam, for example, who said it?
Well, because we're against basically a commercialization of cannabis. We don't want to see the same problem that we have with alcohol and tobacco, for example, where it's all over the place and it's marketed. So we don't want to go down that road. We think that it should be available, obviously, to be able to grow your own, because that's basically a right, and it's also very much helps to look after your own health, because you know what product you have. Also, we need a safe place to be able to consume, so that's where the social club falls in, and obviously you'll be able to purchase a product from there as well. And Yes, there were also dispensaries where they just have cannabis products where you can walk in, you show your ID and purchase and walk out, but nothing commercial.
Okay, and also I think an interesting aspect of your proposal is sort of at least sort of this idea of youth engagement, right, on an issue of youth discussion, and even educational tools. Now in Malta, we've heard it before, you know, some, at least particularly on a government level, you know, that they're going to start a campaign to educate, but it's really never, you know, comes to any fruition. What would a normal educational structure for a child about cannabis involve?
I think the most important, I mean, when you think about it, you know, there have been some positive aspects to what has been going on when it comes to educating the younger generation, especially the very young. But what we're missing is the education for the actual consumers themselves, be they young or old. So what we want to do is target those people because they're being left behind, and you know, show ways of how you can consume in a safer way. Cut out tobacco straight away. That's one of the main things because that's the most dangerous part in a joint is tobacco. And there are obviously various tools that we can use to educate the youth, which is you know, obviously the most vulnerable part of society.
And so do you think nowadays there's still a lot of misinformation about the drug, at least what your rights are when getting arrested and stuff like that?
Yes, I mean, there is sort of, you know, you see government saying one thing and then you see sort of law enforcement acting in a different way, you know, so there's a bit of a tug of war, I would say, in between the two. So we need to get this ironed out. We need to make sure that we move from the depenalized system we have now towards a decriminalized system. The decriminalized system is obviously to be able to cultivate, to consume, and to share cannabis without any law enforcement harassment.
Yes, and so it's obviously very interesting, I think, touching on that thing about particularly harassment and decriminalization is one thing obviously you're proposing is the idea of expungement of criminal records, right on this issue.
Yes,
how would that work, and do you think there's a line can be drawn over there?
I mean, this is one of the fundamental things that has to be included in reform, basically. If we leave that out, we're missing the whole point. There are people now that are waiting to be sentenced, you know, or they're appealing a sentence. These people should be basically struck off the list. And we need to obviously start looking at people that are incarcerated as well for the non-violent crime of maybe cultivating a few plants.
And so obviously, I mean, the country has been debating, all right, maybe a bit on the undertones, this issue for a while, but what really thrust it recently into the national debate was the recent arrest of two people in a hotel room, right, for smoking a joint and carrying some weed on them. When you saw that incident, how did it make you feel, right, on the progress Malta has made?
Let's say it made me feel angry because you know, it's kind of ridiculous, but these things happen on a daily basis. So the thing is, this one was just thrusted into the limelight by the police themselves on their own page on Facebook. Obviously, the press can't follow up on every single case that we have regarding cannabis arrests, but we know that there are a lot. The statistics are there. There are hundreds that are happening. So obviously, yes, I mean, these are the things we need to deal with to make sure they don't ever happen again.
Yes, and I mean, as much as it's good to see it, at least politicians sort of at least now entertain the discussion properly, at least in favor of recreational use, or at least decriminalizing recreational use and cultivation. But we've seen lip service from politicians, particularly on this issue, all the time. I know you've met with the Prime Minister yourself, as relief. What's your feeling? Do you think there will be actual follow through to these proposals, or is it just a proposal?
Oh, let's just try and hope that this time is different, you know, because we've been getting lots of positive, let's call them sound bites from the government, you know, throughout the past 5 years at least. So let's hope this is not just another one. But I think after my meeting with the Prime Minister, I think that we can be positive because when I went to the meeting, there was Rosanne Cotillard, there was also Daniel Micallef present, and it seemed that we were all, you know, telling the Prime Minister the same thing, you know. So we all agreed. He seemed very keen. He wants to discuss internally. And then a few days later, we got that soundbite where he said that, yes, he's in favor of decriminalization and obviously the right to be able to cultivate a few plants for personal use.
So thanks, Andrew. I just want to maybe close it on one thing, because I'm sure there are viewers out there who are completely against the idea of recreational use and, you know, are super hesitant at the idea. Maybe if you could send a message to them, like, why it should be at least heavily decriminalized.
Well, decriminalization doesn't mean that you're giving the go-ahead or saying that something is good for you. Decriminalization means that we should take away the fact that we are criminalizing people for a personal choice. So there's nothing really to worry about. The people that are using cannabis now are going to continue to use cannabis. We just want to make sure that we keep them safe and don't have to put them through hell and crucify them just for personal choice.
Thanks a lot for that, and let us know what you think about this issue in the comments below. That's it from us today, and remember, have a day full of love.